A German friend of the Southern cause, Dr. Hans-Hermann Hoppe. This is a compilation of clips in which he speaks about secession and the ways that a free society may defend itself.
It has deteriorated to the point where the idea of immutable laws of justice and principles of justice, of natural law, has almost entirely disappeared from public consciousness. Law is considered nothing but state-made law, positive law. Law and justice is whatever the state says it is. There is still private property in name, but in practice, private property owners have been almost completely expropriated. Rather than protecting people from invaders and invasions of person and property, the state has increasingly disarmed its own people and stripped them of their most elementary right to self-defense. So, of course, first, that we have to withdraw our ideological support to the idea of democracy. We must recognize that democracy is a system that is incompatible with private property and its protection, and we must regard the central government as illegitimate, and by withdrawing our ideological support for government, we might be able to bring about a situation as it existed before 1861, where people again have the right to secede from the federal government. Thank you. And nothing is more effective in persuading the masses to likewise withdraw from cooperation with government than the constant and relentless exposure and desanctification and ridicule of government and its representatives as moral and economic frauds and impostors, as emperors without any clothes and the butts of all jokes. Now, only if and when the members of the elite, so to speak, have fully absorbed and grasped this lesson and begin to act accordingly, will liberty have again a future. Only then will we have done what La Boétie several hundred years ago advised us all to do. That is, to resolve to serve no more. And you are at once freed. I do not ask you that you place hands upon the tyrant to topple him over, but simply that you support him no longer. Then you will behold him like a great colossus whose pedestal has been pulled away, fall of its own weight and break into pieces. Thank you. The population of free territories is likely heavily armed, and the fighting is done by irregular militias led by defense professionals and in the form of guerrilla or partisan warfare. All fighters are volunteers, and all of their support, food, shelter, logistical help, and so on, is also voluntary. Hence, guerrillas must be extremely friendly to their own population. Their entirely defensive character and their near unanimous support in public opinion can render them nearly invincible, even by numerically far superior invading armies. History provides numerous examples for this. This consideration leads immediately to the other form of defense, namely civil disobedience. Provided only that the secessionists have the will to be free, the effectiveness of a strategy of civil disobedience can hardly be overestimated. The conquerors cannot put one man next to each secessionist and force him to obey their orders. The secessionists must obey by their own free will. However, if they do not, the conquerors will fail. Most importantly, civil disobedience can occur in many forms and degrees. It can range from ostentatious acts of defiance to entirely unobtrusive ways, thus allowing almost everyone to participate in the defense effort. The courageous and the timid, the young and the old, leaders and followers. One may hide armed fighters or not hinder them. One may publicly refuse to obey certain laws or evade and ignore them. One may engage in sabotage, obstruction, negligence, or simply display a lack of diligence. One may openly scoff at orders or comply only incompletely. Tax payments may be refused or evaded. There may be demonstrations, sit-ins, boycotts, work stoppages, or plain slacking off. The conquerors may be maltreated, molested, ridiculed, laughed at, or simply ostracized and never assisted in anything. In any case, all of this contributes to the very same result, namely to render the conquerors powerless, to make them despair and finally resign and withdraw. Now, as is often the case, the first step in the anti-imperialist, anti-democratic struggle is always the most difficult one. Indeed, the difficulties are enormous. I do not want to just minimize this. But once the first step has been successfully taken, however, things get successively easier. Once the number of secessionist territories has reached a critical mass, and every success in one location will promote imitation in other localities, then the difficulties of crushing the secessionists will increase exponentially. In fact, the more time passes, the greater will be the comparative economic and technological advantage of free territories, and in light of the ever-increasing attractiveness and economic opportunities offered by free territories, the imperialist powers will be increasingly happy if they can hang on to their power rather than risk whatever legitimacy they still have in an attack. So there is some hope, at least. Thank you very much.